Art-centric podcast with Rafi and Klee.
Hola, you amazing artists. It's Rafi.
And Klee.
And today we're going to talk about resting. But more so, we're going to talk about the guilt that you feel when you are resting and not doing things, not being busy. A good way to explain it as far as like me is when I'm not in the studio and actively working on something, I have to be really careful because my brain jar will make me feel guilty, like I should be doing something, right? Essentially, I start shitting on myself.
Yeah. I just dealt with this last night. We were watching Tron Ares, which is good. And I thought, like, at nighttime, instead of watching a movie, like, you could just go back to the studio and, like, make stuff. Or, like, that could be your music time. Or you could this and that. And I was like, now I don't even know what happened for the last 5 minutes of this movie.
So that's what you were thinking about while we were watching the movie?
Just, for a few minutes.
Yeah.
And then I was like, shut up. But I think it's especially prevalent this time of year when, like, all the focus is on, like, get your act together for the coming year. You should know everything that you're doing and already be executing plans, plus doing all the stuff that you were already doing it efficiently and without fail.
I think it's one of those things where, like, when I think about this time of year, it's easy to fall into that habitual way of doing things, right? So, like, every January, it's like people set New Year's resolutions and they have plans for next year and all this stuff. And it almost feels like, all right, it's time to really get going because last year I didn't do enough, right? And I feel like that when I really, really tackle the issue for myself, I feel like that's it. It's like you're not doing enough because if you were doing enough, you would be more successful.
Yeah.
I would say that that's one of the brain chatter things that goes on in my head that will cause me to do things where I'll burn out. In fact, we have a comment here from Deborah where she mentions burnout.
I'll read it. Deborah said, oof, this theme hits home for me. I define myself so much by my productivity, and my life is structured around a tremendous number of must-do tasks that have real consequences if I don't complete them. So this is definitely an area of struggle for me. I do rest, of course, but it doesn't count in my internal to-do list, and often periods of rest don't actually feel restful for me. Honestly, I'm probably pretty burnt out most of the time. Does that sound familiar to anyone?
Yeah, let us know if that sounds familiar to you. By the way, you guys, if you're listening to this at home, we have our amazing Rogue Artist family here with us from Patreon. So if you hear us reading their comments, questions, or any brilliance that comes out of our mouth, chances are we're reading it from them. So thank you guys for being here. Barbara said, yep.
So one of the reasons that I know that this brain chatter is BS is because it comes up even when I'm not resting. Like, I'll be doing something, like what I did today was very tedious administrative work that needed to happen. But the brain chatter while I'm doing this, then it took several hours, was like, yeah, but you didn't get laundry folded. And like, do you really need to be doing this today, or shouldn't you be updating the website? Or like, maybe you should be down in the studio working. So it's like, even when you are doing and not resting, then it's telling you, well, you didn't prioritize correctly. You should be doing these 3 other things.
I mean, I go through that too. Like I'll be working on something on the website, updating the website or posting some of my art online. And while I'm doing that, my brain is telling me you should be in the studio creating something. And then when I am in the studio creating something, my brain is like, you should be doing this. So it's almost like if you get used to always thinking you should be doing something else, chances are, especially if you make it a habit that, like, if you decide, you know what, I'm just going to relax, I'm going to rest, I'm going to enjoy my day, and you give into the thinking that you should be doing something else, then I feel like no matter what you're doing, you should always be doing, quote unquote, should be doing something else.
Yeah, it basically is like a runaway train effect. And then when you're resting, just like Deborah, God forbid you should be resting, then it ramps up like hardcore, like all the things. And I know that I've been in this mindset too, because I came across an article that talked about how many hours we waste per year.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I was like, no.
Well, I think so. I have a way. I want to read some of these comments because Heidi said art always over laundry.
Indeed. Laundry will always be there. Jay said, so relevant. Running the biz means I haven't drawn for 6 months. Took a hiatus and just started drawing today after 3 weeks off.
That's awesome, Jay. Yeah, there is. So the way that I think about it is, if I am getting into the studio, then I'm focused on whatever is right in front of me. I've made it. I've been doing pretty good this year because I've decided that I'm just gonna write down if I have something that's going on that I am taking care of with the business side of things. I'm gonna take care of the business side of things, and then I'm not going to ignore the studio by just torturing myself with it, because in my mind, the part that is a waste of time, and really defining, okay, what is a waste of time, right? And this might be counterintuitive. The waste of time is worrying that you're not doing the right thing. The waste of time is thinking that you should be doing something else when you're already doing something. The waste of time is worrying that you're not, you know what I mean? It's like those stagnant moments where you sit there and things take a lot longer because instead of just doing the thing that's in front of you, you're overthinking the thing, trying to get it done faster because you have a million other things to do. Mm-hmm. And then at the end of the day, you don't get it all done. You feel like you failed. And essentially, you're already pre-paving your next day to feel like a failure because you're carrying that emotion on. And it can become a pattern. It becomes a pattern where, like, every day you don't even know what to do in the morning because you have too many things to do and not enough time. And I wish that there were 3 of me. I don't know how many times I've said that. I wish there were 4 of me. And then I think about the reality of that. Like, can you imagine having to deal with 3 other me's?
Do you have to feed them?
Yeah, that's the problem. You have to feed them.
Yeah.
They have to use the bathroom. God, they'd have to take showers. It would be miserable.
It's like Michael says, Buddha had a lot to say about that. You should be.
Yeah.
And to that, I would add, I saved a fortune cookie that I got a long time ago. It's stapled to my jewelry bench, and it says, "It is better to have beans and bacon in peace than cakes and ale in fear." Now, that's kind of weird food choices.
Yeah, it
'cause
is.
beans and bacon could also be party time. But the gist of it, I think, is it doesn't really matter what you're physically doing. If you're doing it with peace of mind, that's productive.
Yeah.
And if you're doing it and you're suffering and you don't have peace of mind, then no matter what you're doing, it's unproductive. So you could be resting in peace of mind or working from a place of peace, and you're going to get more done than if you're hustling in fear or partying in fear.
I really like that.
Yeah, so I kept that fortune cookie.
Yeah, that's really good. I like that because it does make a huge difference. Like when you are, I think we talked about this getting ready for some of the shows at the end of the year, right? Because we had very, very tight deadlines. And at one point, you just let yourself get into the studio and just have fun.
Yes.
Right? You stop thinking about, all right, I got to get this done and thinking about a million things. You just went in there and worked on what you were working on.
I did, and I had a great time, and I made a lot of cool stuff, and
Yeah.
it was much better than if I had made a plan. I mean, I kind of made a little plan,
You
but
can
like
make
not.
you can make a plan. The problem is when not the urgency. Let me see, because I deal with urgency too. I love giving. I'm weird. I love giving myself deadlines because it really kind of forces me to.
It
do
lights
something.
the fire.
Yeah.
I think that when you're in panic mode, that's when the stuff doesn't happen.
Yeah.
And it's been easier for me with the studio than it has been for other areas. Because in the studio, when I'm not in a peaceful mind frame, I make stupid, dangerous mistakes. And the jewelry bench is quite dangerous when you're not in a good headspace. So when I start making those kinds of errors that could be dangerous or could potentially destroy a piece or destroy a stone, I know
You're,
it's time to walk
you're
away.
forcing it. You're forcing it at that point.
Yeah.
Right?
And either I
like
need to go
not
drink
feeling
water
it.
and breathe
Right.
and come back, or sometimes it's dehydration for real. Or I'm done for the day and like that's it. And I'm moving on to something else.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
I feel the same way because like it's I what is it? It is the extra urgency of something. And that's what I like to investigate a little bit deeper, right? Because in my mind, if you weren't worried that you were going to get it wrong, then you wouldn't really have that urgency, right? So like, oh, I'm gonna, I gotta keep up with everything, or else I'm gonna drop the ball. It's almost like you're already thinking like, if I don't do this, then this happens. And I feel like that is, I know, I don't even feel like, I know that that is one of the main recipes for the burnout, right? Because you get to a place where you think everything that you're doing is something that you must do and you have to do. And if you don't do it, everything falls apart. And that's a lot of pressure. And then getting into the studio, it's like, I have to create these many pieces. I have to make sure that it looks perfect. I have to do this. And you're doing that in the studio, and you're like, I have to do the laundry. I have to wash the dishes that are in the sink. I have to, and then all of a sudden, you've got all of these things that you have to do and you should be doing. And you can only really just do a thing at once.
so let's break down these components. Component number 1, you have to. You don't have a choice.
Right.
Component number 2, it's high stakes. It feels like the whole house of cards is gonna fall apart if you don't do it. And number 3, it feels like something you potentially can't get done.
Right.
Like, so there's urgency, high stakes, and you don't have a choice. That's basically a recipe for fight or flight mode.
It is. It is fight or flight mode. The other thing to add to that is adding in that component of feeling like the thing is necessary. Like you cannot not do the thing.
Yeah, that's the no choice part. You have to.
Like it has to happen. I want to say that was one of the main components when we after you got sick last year that I really looked at and was like, all right, do I really need to do this? Right? Because I realized that in my effort to fill in all the gaps of rest time, right? I made things way more difficult than they actually needed to be. There'd be a lot of steps to things. I needed to do things in a certain order. Things became more rigid. And like, it's first off, for someone like me who is not rigid at all, I cannot be rigid. Like my schedule, everything needs to be flexible. Like I need to be able to be convinced that I made a choice, that I'm going to do the thing. Because if I feel like someone else, like I'm doing it because someone else told me, or even me told me, then I really struggle with that. Like I don't like rigid schedules. I don't like rigid things. And yet, for a while there, I was trying to juggle everything by putting together checklists. And and at one point, like I started with one checklist, and then next thing I know, I had 5 checklists on my wall. And there was a part of my brain that was like convinced like this is going to work. But then when I analyzed it a little bit deeper, I realized that the reason that I needed the rigid schedule and the checklist was because I didn't trust that I was just going to do it.
Oh, that makes sense. I don't trust that I'm just going to do it. And also, I'm freaking out. So I need to make myself a scaffolding to work inside.
Yeah.
So, addressing the 3, I don't have a choice. It's critical, it's high stakes, and I don't think I can do it. I don't trust myself to do it.
Yeah.
one of the realizations I had recently, because like I've seen this in action, right? Like Rafi and I will have like the same deadline for the same thing. And he'll be like, great, that's plenty of time. And I'll be like, no. And my brain gremlins want to be like, well, he doesn't have to blah, 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 blah. But I do. I have to do laundry. And I'm like, he's got a million other things that he has to do that I don't have to do. Like a lot. So as far as shared responsibility goes, we're pretty even Stevens. We're each handling all the things to make this ship sail.
To make everything work. Yeah.
So that aside, brain gremlins, one of the things I realized is like, I don't actually have to do any of it. Like and a lot of these things are self-imposed. Like we sat down and decided when this show was going to happen. We signed up for this thing. We set the dates even for things like doctor's appointments and meetings. Like I set the dates for those things. And if I need to move the date, I can't, which we just did. Like we set a date for an art drop off that now doesn't work for us because it's too many things in 1 week. So we moved it.
Yeah.
You can't always do that, but you always do have the option to be like, well, you know what? I'm going to just not do this open call.
Yeah.
Or, you know what? Towels aren't getting folded today. I could, if I chose, let all the chores go and let all the art projects go. I could wipe the slate clean and start from scratch. All my admin stuff I did today, I could just not do that and just go completely emotion based on my pricing structure going into 2026. I could do that. I chose to do administrative work today. I chose to do a load of laundry today. I chose all the dates for things. But there's no have to. So that removes the whole I'm being forced into this sort of thing.
I think that makes such a big difference between like I have to do this thing and I choose to do this thing. It makes such a huge emotional difference. It's like, well, I want to do this. It's the same thing as like, if we sat down whenever we do, like if we sit down to do our taxes, if we sat down, even though there's a deadline and all that stuff, but if we sat down and we're like, well, we have to do our taxes, the vibe there, the feeling there just makes it blah, whereas like, all right, well, obviously I want to do my taxes. I want to get them done at a certain date because I don't want to deal with the other things and it's going to feel good to get them done. Mm-hmm. And I really want to know what we did this year, how we did, and this is the best way to do it. And so it's like really just kind of wrapping my mind around the enjoyment of being able to do something, right? And as bad as taxes are, it's not the worst thing in the world. There are other things that I can't wrap my mind around really in the enjoyment of doing it, so I don't do it. And that's where I really go up against the part of your brain that is like, no, you need to do this. This is important. If you don't do this, everything falls apart. And it's like, just like, no, I'm scrapping it and allowing myself to feel that, that feeling.
Tension.
Yeah. The tension that comes up in your body where you're like, oh my God, like where you go into fight or flight and then you survive past it and you're like, you know what? It was okay. Everything worked out.
Yeah, and I want to mention this one thing real quick and then read some of these awesome comments to address the second thing of like it's high stakes and the whole house of cards comes down if I don't do this thing. I think a useful question is what really would happen if I didn't do this thing? Let's take a high stakes example. The curriculum for our kids in our art classes, the school year curriculum. We pretty much felt like we needed to do that. Mm-hmm. And it was pretty fun, I think. But had we not done it, the worst thing that happens is we go into class every time and we wing it.
Yeah. I mean,
and the kids probably have a good time and we probably have a good time.
That's why I wasn't stressed out about it. Like, cause I was like, all right, well, let's come up with the curriculum. And my whole thing was like, if we could come up with the curriculum by Monday, the next day that we're teaching, great. If not, then we wing it. They're going to have a good time regardless. Cause you and I are fun. We're knowledgeable as far as art goes. Like they're going to learn something and whatever. Now we want something structured. And that's the thing. It's not like I have to do this thing. It's like, no, we want something a little bit more structured
It
that we
makes
can
life
follow.
easier
Exactly.
in the moment.
Yeah.
Can you scroll the ticker tape just a hair?
Yeah.
Kathleen said, I have a show opening on the 13th. Rest will come after. And I wanted to mention that because sometimes it is just really busy times and there's a
Yeah.
lot going on. But long term, and we've talked about this a lot, like long term, that's not sustainable. But you can do it, especially if you offer yourself periods of rest in between and afterwards.
I would say every evening, and that's the thing, because we can go at it the entire day if we wanted to. And there are days that we go a little bit longer, and I'll even announce, or Klee will announce, like today's going to be a little bit later, but even still, we give ourselves a window of at least 2 to 3 hours at the end of the night to just relax, to just relax.
And that includes, like, we don't take phone calls from anyone
No
unless
phone
it's an
calls,
emergency.
nothing, no
Like,
social media, no emails, no nothing.
yeah.
You totally unplug, and for us, we hang out with each other. Maybe we'll watch a movie. Maybe we'll eat something, but it's just unplugging. And as long as you do that every day, because like, if you're not giving yourself at least 2 or 3 hours a day to just relax at some point, then you are telling yourself a story that's not true.
Yeah, and also, like, then you're getting into, like, messing with your sleep territory,
Yeah.
which is a snowball. For me personally, if I don't have decompression time in the evening, then my brain doesn't want to shut down to go to sleep, and then I'm sleep deprived, and then it just becomes a bigger problem.
Yeah.
Sky Blue said, it's been art, chores, or couch for about 6 years over studio cleaning. Yesterday I was useless and had all the guilty feelings. Today decided to just start the scary project. Half done. Yay.
Yes. A lot of times it's like you put something off, and that's one of the issues with the should thing, right? Because like you really want to get something done. Like, I want to get into studio, I want to get started on this commission, and the way that I thought about it was like, okay, well, this week I'm gonna have very little time in the studio because I do want to get the website updated so that we go into 2026 feeling good, right? So then it's like getting myself geared up for the website, and then just jotting down the studio for next week. Now, next week, that's my priority. The website then becomes secondary. I have to do that because if I'm working on anything and I'm thinking about something else or something like that, then what happens is that's where procrastination comes in. Then all of a sudden you create the habit of making this thing more important than this thing. It's not that this thing, the website, is more important than getting to the studio and creating. It's that I am actively making a choice to do this first. And I think that's part of that thing. It's like the shoulds in there. It's like eliminating the shoulds. No, I am doing this because I am actively making a choice that I'm doing it like this. And tomorrow I might change my mind and decide, you know what, I've done enough with this. Now I'm going to go and do this way.
Yeah.
But I think as long as you know that you have a choice and you haven't convinced yourself or locked yourself in a mental cage that says, I can't do anything other than this. And this is the thing that I have to do, and then I got to get this done, and then I got to get this done, and then you're just piling everything on top of each other. It becomes it's too much.
Yeah, and so addressing the third component, right? It feels overwhelming. I just don't really feel like I can. It's become like a Godzilla-sized thing.
Yeah.
Is if you have decided that it is in fact time and that it would in fact feel good to you to do the thing, like making a bunch of pieces for an art show that you agreed to do, then what I do is, okay, it's time to get in the studio, and I am compartmentalizing all the should. Like, I'm actively pushing them away. Less thinky parts, more doing parts. So I get in the studio and I do whatever it takes to just shut down that chatter and do the damn thing.
We actually say that out loud to one another. Less thinky parts, more doing parts. Yeah.
Yeah. So it might be hijacking my brain by putting on music that I know I'm going to sing along with, and then the thinky parts get drowned out by Whitney Houston or whoever's on the radio, and just doing the thing. And actually, when a thought comes up, like with all the other stuff that you have to do, then you just be like, no, not today, Satan. I'm singing and making stuff. That's what's happening right now. I will worry about these forms and this laundry and getting the grocery order in and whatever else and our meeting on Tuesday when it's time to think about that. But right now it's time to do this. Less thinky parts, more do parts.
Jay said, cleaning always takes so long. It's hard. Great job.
Yeah, cleaning's definitely not my favorite. Cleaning is better with music.
I mean, there's
incense.
There's certain things like I'll do some of the, depending on how many dishes. I will literally do a half set of dishes or like the full set of dishes. But I've got a rhythm that goes like I'll do it in the morning before I go and do something else. Or like if the floor needs vacuum, then I'll vacuum. But it's not like I don't set aside this like, all right, now I'm going to clean everything. Like it's like you just kind of compartmentalize and clean a thing here and there.
I do a lot of drive-by cleanings.
Yeah.
Also, like, oh, the toilet needs cleaning. Let me just do it right now while I'm standing here in the bathroom looking at it because it takes like less than 5 minutes to do. Or let me fold some towels while I'm waiting for rice to cook.
Most things like wiping a counter or something like that, most things don't take very long. The problem is putting it off until a dedicated, and people have gotten used to that. They're like, well, today's a cleaning day, and then they do that. Now, I do have cleaning days for the studio. That is a different animal completely. Like the studio is something that within an hour, it could look like a tornado went through it. So like I do set up like before I'm going to get into studio and work on these other projects, I need to reset my space.
Mm-hmm. Let's read some of these comments.
Yep.
Deb said, reactance, the way we push back and resist when we feel controlled, even by our own desires. Yup, I definitely experienced that. Kelly said, I had the luxury of taking 4 weeks off of work while it was renovated. I had 440 hours of paid time off and didn't want to work at hospital. Most of the time was spent making myself clothes because it was fun. That's awesome, Kelly.
That's awesome.
Kelly also said, I didn't want to go back.
I don't blame you.
I'm glad you felt that the time was well spent, though, and that you enjoyed it. Stars said, my mind is a library card catalog of everything I've experienced so far. It always sounds urgent when it comes to being productive. The experience of rest lives outside of its knowledge base.
Yeah.
Well said.
Being productive, and we'll cover that after we read these, but I want to talk a little bit more about that whole idea behind productivity because it's gotten
out of control.
It's gotten out of control. I mean, the whole corporate agenda environment, the whole hustle environment, the whole like being productive versus whatever. Productivity, it doesn't work the way that people want you to think it works.
Heidi said, it takes you an hour to trash your studio. I can do it in 10 minutes. Just wanted to read that. It is out of control. And it's not unlike, and I wonder now, what age do they start telling kids to choose your life path now? Because for us, it was like, I don't know. I think we were probably like in our early teens.
I mean,
when they tell you to start thinking about college or vocational school and what life path you want, and you're like, I don't know, man, I'm still a new human.
That depends. Because I grew up and my life path was already chosen for me.
Yeah.
So like I think everybody experiences that different depending on what expectations.
My point is that the hustle culture is getting more and more out of control, just like Black Friday creeps up earlier and earlier every year. And we're seeing kids having anxiety that are really young to be having anxiety.
Yeah.
Jay said, I'm a person that works well if I gamify it. I document all my tasks in a planner and I keep track of hours. It also prevents me from saying I haven't done anything, which I often do.
Yep.
I'm in agreement. We like to gamify the stuff too, and we also keep track of things.
Everything and
planners.
And if I add other things like, oh, let me call this, where it pops in, let me call these people and make sure that this is all scheduled or whatever. I write in there called blah, 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 and then I cross it out just so that you could actually see how much you do during the day, because if you think that you don't do enough, chances are you're not really keeping track of how much you've done.
Yeah. Rachel said, I liked your work like a dog theory. Yes. And so just to recap that, if you didn't catch that podcast, we talked about how dogs are, because the phrase work like a dog is common, but dogs actually play like a lot and rest a lot, and they rest whenever they want to, and they don't care what you think.
Nope.
I mean, they do care what you think.
No,
but
they don't.
They look at you like you should come nap on the floor too.
They don't care what you think, and they don't understand what you think.
Raven said checklists can be great for organizing your thoughts and getting an overview of a project, but they are not helpful once you start feeling bad about not accomplishing the task.
Exactly.
That's exactly right.
Which, if you set yourself up with like 4 daily checklists, then you are definitely not going to accomplish what needs to be accomplished.
Barbara said everything is a choice. How, what, and why we choose what to prioritize can be flexible and fluid if we choose it to be.
Exactly.
I'm working on letting go of feeling like I need to control stuff, which mostly I can't, and trust myself more that I can handle everything that comes my way the best I can in that moment. That's great.
That's great. That's a big one, because a lot of the frustration that you feel when you're like, I should be doing this or I should be doing that, I can honestly attribute to wanting to control stuff, to almost like an obsessive compulsive way of
trying to make sure that everything works out okay.
Trying to make sure that everything works out
and
okay.
We had this great conversation about trusting yourself to be able to handle stuff the moment that you're presented with it. And the more you can trust yourself to be able to handle stuff, the less you feel like you need to control yourself.
Exactly.
And that was a really good synopsis on that, which is really, really awesome. And a good reminder, too, because I forget it all the time.
Uh-huh.
Raven said, I've been actively having to remind myself it's okay to not always be busy over winter break. I was in overdrive with work, graduation, and the holidays. Yeah, this time, it's funny. We're usually going 340 billion miles an hour during the holiday season, with the holiday season and family and work and meetings.
And then we tell ourselves, like, all right, the slow time is coming.
Yeah.
I think that's a lie, because then the slow time comes, and then it's like, no, I got to fill it with all the things.
Don't you want to plan things at 340 billion miles per hour? Fun fact, the Romans didn't consider this time of year to be like a legitimate time.
Right, it wasn't even on the calendar.
Much so they didn't even give January and February month names. So the year started with March and ended at the end of December.
So
they didn't name this time. It was this weird in-between time where stuff didn't happen. And I think there's something to that.
Let's bring that back.
I mean, it's fine that they have names and stuff happens, but let's just remember,
we could just call them the months that nothing happens. Yeah.
Yeah. Wendell said 2 good questions to ask. 1, what is the worst that could happen if I don't do this?
Very good, yeah.
2, am I actually in danger?
Very good,
yeah.
Wendell.
That can nip the fight or flight in the bud.
That's what those are similar to the questions we ask ourselves when we start reevaluating, where you do the brain dump of all the things that, like, these are all the things that we do and we want to get accomplished and all this stuff, and then going through it, it's like, do I really want to do this? And what's going to happen if I don't do this? Mm-hmm. And it's like, am I going to like burst into flames and like
probably not,
all my limbs fall off and all, like, it's not going to happen. You're going to be fine.
Raven said, okay, easy to tell Satan not today. Little harder to tell kids. Well, you are correct. Kids are a different animal.
Although
or you just tell them, not today, Satan. Go do something.
I just pictured myself telling my kids when they're like, Dad, can I blah, blah? It's like, not today, Satan. Don't do that. Don't do that to your kids.
There's things that kids need that, like, you know, you can't let them starve. You can't let them, like, you can't neglect them. Like, you need to be a parent to the children. But I think you can distract them with activities.
I think a big part of that, though, is making sure that you do set boundaries for yourself, right? And train them to understand those boundaries, right? But also the flip side to that is making sure that you stay in the mindset of, I'm not doing this because I have to. I'm doing this because I want to. And I had to really, really, when it came to my kids, get to that
Because
place.
you do love them and you don't want them to perish.
Right, because if not, and one thing that a lot of parents have a hard time admitting, but like I'll admit it all the way, is like when you are in that place where you feel like I have to do this, I have no choice but to do this, it's very, very easy for resentment to start setting in. And
Mm-hmm.
like that's one thing that I didn't want, because I experienced a lot of that with my mom. My mom, it just felt like there's a lot of resentment coming from her
Yeah.
because she had to take care of me. And so like I remember making sure that like that wasn't that I understood, no, I'm doing this because I want to. And I can say no or be lazy about it. Be like, all right, you want dinner? Here's some Chef Boyardee or something. I don't know.
Yeah. Brett said, I'm too old to play those productivity games. Even my kids are done with it, and our youngest is 18.
Yeah.
There's I think there's a shift happening. I mean, hustle culture is still out there because I see it. I've seen it.
It's so
But
gross though.
I think more and more people are like, this is kind of gross.
It really is. It's like it looks like a big act all the time. All the
Yeah.
time.
Yeah. And like some of the people that are pushing it, like they don't look so
They
healthy.
don't look good.
Kathleen said, I remember being taught resumes in fourth grade. Productivity has been taken over by the business class.
Oh man.
Star said, it starts the moment someone asks, what do you want to be when you grow up? And that thinking is instilled if anyone cares to ask.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I think the moment that you like, what do you want to do when you grow up? And rock star ice skating ballerina all of a sudden is off the table.
Right, and they're like, no, no, you got to think of something like, what do you really want to be? And it's like, that's what
That's
I want
my
to be.
yeah.
Yeah.
Raven said self care made easier. Just pretend you are a human Tamagotchi. It's
Yes.
true.
I
You need
love
all the
it.
things
I
too.
love it.
Rochelle said, yes, I just saw this one, so I need to run around on a full CCS and play a lot. Star said the school system is specifically designed to create good worker bees.
Yes,
Yes.
exactly. That was one of the things in my book. I had done some research into even the guy that came up with the system for the education was like, this is temporary. Because of the Industrial Revolution, needed workers, and they needed to have a hierarchy of workers. So some of those workers, in order to be a foreman, you need to know how to read. You need to know how to tell time. You need to know how to follow directions, and it's so like really that the education for all came in because we needed employees, we needed workers for factories and stuff. And like I said, the guy that came up with that system, with the way of measuring intellect and all that stuff, said like, this is temporary. This is not
It's not
this is
sustainable.
not sustainable. It's not a good system. This is the best we could come up with right now, but this is going to need to improve. And we didn't improve. Not, and I don't want to. I'm not bashing teachers because teachers are doing the best they can within that system.
Yeah.
But
But
the system itself kind of stinks.
we're starting to see even a gradual shift here and there in pockets of like
Yeah.
Montessori school programs and other kinds of learning being plugged in. It's really slow
Yeah.
though. Let's see. I learned it from you too, said Barbara, about trusting yourself. Having recently been laid off, my system is slowly undoing a lifetime of corporate BS. It's a
Oh,
process, said Stars.
congratulations. It was the same thing for me. It was honestly, here's something that maybe I've never talked about in a video. Our road trip that we left in 2009 when we met each other and we lived out of the back of a Ford Explorer, our road trip was part of that because I quit my corporate job and honestly I was crawling up the walls. I didn't know what to do with myself, and I realized that I wanted to put myself in a situation that was going to force me into moments of relaxing, moments of just driving, moments of doing nothing. And it was difficult. It was difficult, but it was the reason. One of the many reasons for the road trip was to do that.
Um, Deb says, but what if I can't handle things? That seems like a more accurate assessment for me.
So, like, what if you can't handle things?
That I want to kind of unpack that. Do you mean so? Okay, I think you either mean one of two things, and maybe both, because it's usually both. There's just too much to physically handle, in which case something or some things has to go. We call it cutting the fluff. It happens every year.
Yep.
These things I don't have to do, and honestly, they're soul crushing, so let's get rid of them.
Yeah.
Or even if they're not soul crushing, they're just not doing it for me.
Here's this thing that I think that if I do this, I'm going to get this out of it, and I'm going to do that. And honestly, all it's doing is stressing me out. Gone.
Or I think that if I don't do it, I'm going to get struck by lightning or burst into flames. And
Gone.
I get it. There are some non-negotiables, like keeping kids alive, or if you're a caregiver for a parent. But cutting the fluff sometimes means, what can I do to alleviate some of this pressure?
Yep.
Maybe I can rearrange things. Maybe get rid of what you can.
Maybe I could not focus on this year and put it on a shelf for next year.
Mm-hmm.
You know, because that's the thing. It's like with us, we have so many projects going on that it's easy to get overwhelmed, right? And there are projects that we aren't even going to touch for another 2 years.
Yeah.
You know, like that. What's the point of trying to force everything into this year? It's like, all right, well, let's comfortably get through this. And then in a couple of years, we could do this other thing.
Yeah. The other side to that is you might be saying, I'm just not somebody who can handle this amount of stuff. Like I hear people say, like, I just don't have a mind for business, right? So essentially they're saying like, I can't handle the business side of things, or I crumble easily. I just can't handle the pressure, which is a belief that I used to have about myself, which circles back around to what Barbara reminded us of this conversation of, like, you really got to build trust with yourself. And the foundational block for building that trust that, yes, you can handle it, is that you've done it so far.
Yeah. And the other side of building trust with that is saying, yes, I can get rid of this. Yes, I don't need to do this if I don't want to. Mm-hmm. Let's get to some of these other ones.
Jay said, I've been big on using up my special stuff lately. Art supplies, washi tape, stickers, bath stuff. Why does being nice to myself feel so rebellious?
It is. It is. It's an act of rebellion that you should do every day. I like that.
Stars said winter months are meant for hibernating, right? Slowing down, recalibrating, preparing inside for spring. Rest is so vital. Nature built it into the season.
Exactly.
True
exactly.
that. It is the natural order of things, unless you live in Florida. Jennifer said, when I feel forced to do something, I find myself getting passive aggressive and I have to snap out of it because I don't like it.
Yeah,
I can relate.
Yeah, I relate to that. That's part of that thing. It's like, oh, I have to do this thing, and then it's easy to get into that way of feeling and thinking, which just makes everything so much harder.
Raven said, it really all is about balance for me. Learning good boundaries, even with kids, has been a game changer.
It is.
Yep.
It is.
Let's see. The plants are dormant. Why aren't we? Said Wendell.
Agree. Kids equals at times. Yeah.
It's true.
I agree with that as well.
Sarah got half of a thing done, and now gonna do a mirror image tomorrow. See? Sarah's chunking through things.
Good job.
Raven said, I've been blessed to have some amazing charter schools in my city where they work with kids' strengths and ask questions like, what are your passions and interests?
Yeah, see, that's
the stuff right there.
Freaking perfect.
I hope we continue to see more of that in schools. Because, I heard 10 years ago where companies were like, we don't have enough working adults with critical thinking skills and imaginations. And I'm like, yeah.
They were like, yeah. Well, I mean, and that's the issue is that, so, there's convergent thinking and there's divergent thinking.
And we need both.
And you need both. You need to be able to do both. And what the way that the curriculums are, or the school system, the grading system is set up right now, just deals with convergent thinking. Mm-hmm. So that thinking outside of the box, and then, then there's not... there's really a shortage on innovation lately, and it's like, yeah, because you need people to think outside of the box in a different way. So it is interesting. I don't know. It's
Yeah.
just the whole corporate mentality is just dumb.
Raven said, "Does it feed you, fuel you, or fulfill you? Otherwise, it's fluff."
Exactly, Raven. That's a great way to put it. Feed you, fuel you, or fulfill you.
Otherwise, it's fluff.
Yeah.
The F factors.
Mine is like, am I absolutely excited? Am I excited to do this thing? Can I get excited to do this thing?
Yeah, and you can in weird places. Like my very tedious administrative work that I did for hours today. Believe it or not, I actually enjoyed it because outside of the brain chatter of you should be doing whatever else it chattered about, I was excited because I was setting myself up to have an easier system to work with going forward.
Yeah.
And that got me excited.
Yeah.
So
So it's like the components. Like, what is the thing that gets you excited? Like we love using the blanket statement of like, well, I love creating art. Not really. Not always. You know
no,
what I mean?
sometimes
So
it's
like,
horrible.
there has to be something specific. Like, what am I excited about with this piece? Ooh, there's an art show. I'm really excited to show off these 3 pieces, and I want them to be like this. What am I really excited about with this? Ooh, I want to release this series, or I'm really excited about using these colors. So I get very specific about the thing that I'm excited about, and not use, because if you use a blanket statement, you're like, I just love creating art, and you're in there telling yourself that, and you are really not having a good time that day, like you basically are like telling yourself, like, I'm willing to lie to myself to whatever.
For productivity's sake.
If you get to a place where you're like, no, I love creating art. I love getting into my studio and I love creating. And then you ask yourself, but why? And you have a good answer for yourself that day, then it works. If you are like, oh, no, I love this. Why? You have a good answer for yourself, then it works. And that's how you know. Like, you could get yourself to fall in love with anything that you're doing, but don't lie to yourself. Make sure that you figure out that whole fake it till you make it thing. You got to have some emotion to back up the fake it part. There's got to be emotion.
Mm-hmm.
So
it's true. Rochelle said, I'm still balancing the factory and art life, but I've been fortunate to have a job where I can micromanage myself. So now I'm practicing doing that for my art so I can get used to working for myself.
that is good.
Way
That is
to
good
flip the
transitioning.
script there.
Yeah.
And there's good things that you can take from certain working. Like, I remember them saying, like, do like astronauts and compartmentalize your work and living spaces. So, like, when you're in this area, like, your body muscle memory automatically knows it's time to create art.
Yeah.
And it could be, like, in a small space or a big space.
That's why they talk about, like, even like candles or like some kind of like ritualistic thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Wendell said, turns out we can handle more than we think we can. Ain't that the truth,
That's
Wendell?
right, Wendell.
You know what's an interesting thing, and I think this will be my final thought on this.
Okay.
I am at my most productive when I'm not thinking.
So am I.
And when I'm overthinking, it's because I'm wasting time. So as counterintuitive as it sounds, sometimes I'm at my worst mental states when I don't have enough going on. And it only feels like I have too much going on because I'm burning the candle at both ends emotionally rather than physically.
Yeah.
There's having a lot to do, and then there's busying yourself because you're in fight or flight mode, and that's just how you operate.
And
learning to see the difference. And I'm not saying that this is a blanket thing, but when the shit really hits the fan, for me, I'm usually calm and pretty efficient at what needs to happen. And I even enjoy myself
because
in those times.
You're moving through the motions and you're taking care of what you need to take care of in the moment that it's in front of you, not thinking about what you're going to do.
Right. And when I'm idling, which is different from resting, idling, like I'm wringing my hands or I'm spinning my wheels, but I'm not actually doing, but I'm panicking.
Mm-hmm.
then all the time slips away from me and I have no energy left. And so a lot of times when I'm worried about not having enough time, I say to myself, like, you must not have enough to do right now.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you wouldn't be sitting here freaking out.
Yep. Exactly.
Pick a thing, whether it's rest or art or domestic arts, and get to it. Less thinky parts, more doey parts.
Yeah, that's really good. Being present is always a game changer, says Rochelle. Yes, absolutely. And that's a big part of what I want to end this with, which is there exactly like what Klee said. To me, I have to identify what exactly is a waste of time. And I talked about this a little bit earlier. So, sitting on the couch, actively breathing, focusing on my space and being actively thinking about something purposefully is not a waste of time, even though I'm not technically doing something. And that's the thing. I had to rewrite that entire dialogue for myself of what it means to do something. You are always doing something. Always. When you are sleeping, you are doing that. If you are sitting staring at the sky, you are doing that. There never is a moment that you are doing nothing. Okay? So that whole idea that you're not doing nothing or you're not doing enough, that's bullcrap, because you are always doing something. The question is, are you doing something deliberately or are you doing something on autopilot? So when I find myself worried about something that I have zero control over, and that's what's taking up my time, to me, that's a waste of time. When I am worried about not having enough time, that is a waste of time. You know, like those things that you have zero control over, or that you are forcing yourself to do, or thinking you're not enough and I have to do this thing in order to prove that I am, or like this is high stakes or something like that. Those things that are laced in that sense of worry, those things to me, those are a waste of time. Because I'm going to deal with things that are in front of me. I am going to move forward and not be running away from something. You know what I mean? So like that's kind of the way that I look at that. And it's just redefining for yourself, what does it actually mean to be wasting time, and what does it actually mean to be doing something versus not doing something? So that's my last 2 cents.
And if you're going to say some mean stuff to yourself about productivity, ask, would I say this to my Tamagotchi?
That's good.
Raven said, absolutely. Sometimes busy work can help, but you have to recognize when and where that is the reality. I bring crochet projects to places I need to manage anxiety. That's a great practice.
Yeah, that's great.
And Deb said neurographic drawing or doodling to manage anxiety.
Beautiful,
at
Deb.
times. That's all really great. Really great. That was what I just said. I equate doing to action versus just being present and still, said Barbara.
Yeah, it's because Barbara asked, so is just being still doing? Being still is doing. Doing and being, that's the thing. It's like, even in that sense, listen, the whole thinking positive movement, the whole affirmation movement, don't take everything with a grain of salt, because at the end of the day, even what I'm saying right now, at the end of the day, what matters most is how you feel based on what you are telling yourself. That's the whole reason that for me, I am always doing something. If I am meditating, I am doing something. If I am sitting in stillness, I am doing something, right? If I am freaking out and worried and completely like stagnant and frozen, I am doing something. But I need to identify what I'm doing, and is what I'm doing a waste of time or not? You know what I mean? Like, I'm not going to get anything from worrying about something, or worrying that I don't have enough time, or worrying that I'm not good enough, or worrying about anything. Worry has never gotten you anything. It is the biggest time suck that exists out there. So it's like, just move forward.
Rochelle said to Raven, that's such a good idea. Way better than doom scrolling, which I'm always guilty of.
No, doom scrolling.
Yeah,
Doom
so
scrolling.
I would say, as far as a time sink, right? And social media is an easy one to throw on the table
Yeah.
because I often, well, I don't really go on there anymore. But
No.
when I do, I don't usually feel very good if I spend more than a couple minutes. And so I've sort of eliminated I've eliminated doom scrolling, and I have pretty much eliminated scrolling through social media for any lengthy time.
Yep.
If there is something that you do that doesn't make you feel good and makes you feel like the time was wasted because you feel icky afterwards and you don't want to do it anymore, the trick is to replace it with something else.
That's pretty good. I mean, hindsight, you take a look at like, all right, every time I do this is how I feel.
I feel icky, do something else.
Do something else. Change it up, pivot, do something, even if it's not getting rid of that thing. All right, how can I approach this differently?
Even if it's a slightly less icky thing, moving on to, so I replaced doom scrolling with checking my email. Not great, but better.
But better.
Then I replaced checking my email with, well, I'm actually still in the process of doing that. But you got to just baby steps sometimes.
Well, I think that that's a good place to end. I think we both gave our food for thought. Yeah, it's an ongoing thing, and most definitely, like, we don't have that. I could speak for myself. I don't have that completely figured out. Like, there are times where I, am resting or I'm doing something and the guilt comes up, and I have a feeling that that feeling of guilt is going to come up no matter what when I'm trying to rest, that I should be doing something else, or I should be more productive, or I should be hustling, or whatever it is. The thing is recognizing when it comes up that, like, that guilt is a bag of bullshit, and making that your mantra. Guilt is a bag of bullshit. There's nothing for me to feel guilty about because I've decided to take some time for myself. And just repeating it to yourself as many times as you have to in order to feel that way. Okay.
Speaking of setting deadlines for ourselves and things that we decided we were doing,
we are doing the Love and Jazz Hands virtual open studio live stream on January the 30th at 5 p.m. Eastern. And you could go to the link on our website. Also, during that live stream, we are giving away a beautiful piece of jewelry by Klee.
You can enter the giveaway to win it.
You can enter the giveaway to win it, and you don't have to wait until the date of the live stream, although we will be announcing the winner during that live stream. You could go to our website, www.rafiandklee.com, and you'll see some links to go to the giveaway. Go ahead and do that.
My mom once told me that guilt doesn't come with positive change. Guilt that doesn't come with positive change is just a wasted emotion.
Yeah.
Ooh, that's pretty good.
It is, because guilt is not worry. Worry is kind of stupid. And I know some people argue, and when I'm talking about worry, I mean where you're just sitting there not doing anything, whatever. There's a difference between being like, you go to do something and I'm worried that you're going to hurt yourself, and then I do something about it. I mention like, hey, I'm a little worried that you're going to hurt yourself. Then there's something to do. But when there's something that you don't have control over and you're like just sitting there worried, it's kind of a waste of time. Guilt, it's kind of the same thing. It's like, what are you going to do? If this thing made you feel guilty, what are you going to do about it? And in this situation, you are either going to change your behavior or change your thoughts. Wait a second, I don't need to feel guilty about this. Like, you're examining it,
I had the thought the other night that, if people knew how much you rest at night, they would be disappointed in you. And I was like, they're probably busy resting too and not talking about it.
Yeah. I want to, before we go, Deb, I just struggle with not making progress towards my goals. My productivity goals are within me, and it's hard that I really struggle to make reasonable progress towards my goal. So, Deb, when it comes to things like that, there's a lot to unpack there.
Mm-hmm.
Because one thing might be, what are your goals? Like, your goals need to be something that is actually accessible, right? I want to create 5 pieces a month. That's a goal that you could actually make some striving towards. You could tell yourself, all right, if I get into the studio this much, then I'll be able to do it. And that's important, because if it's another different type of goal, I want to get into this many galleries this year. I want to make this much money with my art. I want to do right. Those are goals that you have zero control over. The basically the control factor there are the galleries or the people buying the art or things like that are outside of your control. And so, like, when it comes to goal setting, it's really, really important to set yourself up with something that is actually attainable, that you can do, that you need no one else to be able to accomplish, right? And those are real, true goals. And then from there, you're able to take a look at the goals and be reasonable with yourself, right?
Yeah.
And schedule in that time to be able to take a break. Because a lot of times, I could tell you right now, based on experience, the reason I have a hard time achieving goals is because I've set myself up with way too many of them, and I haven't given myself time to rest. It's counterproductive to overschedule yourself, to overtax yourself. Because the longer that you're doing that and the more burned out you get, the less you do. And then you're expecting yourself to be a superhero or a super person with like superpowers, and you can't do that. You know, even Superman needs to rest after getting a bite out of kryptonite. You know what I mean? Like, you have to give yourself rest time, and not only physical bodily rest time, but emotional and mental rest time as well.
Mm-hmm. It might be redefining what reasonable progress is, because I can tell you, like, every single year of my art career thus far, I have ended the year feeling like I didn't meet the goals that I set out to meet.
Nope.
Disregarding the fact for a long time that I definitely made leaps and bounds forward, but because it didn't look like what I thought it was supposed to look like, then I had failed. And honestly, I did that right up until today. I'm still working on it, but it's a huge focus of mine after the whole hospital thing and recovery and all that, and trying to like sort of recalibrate of like, I found myself getting mad yet again at the end of this year because I wasn't where I said I was going to be, and realizing like some of that stuff was too ambiguous. Some of it was not reasonable, and it doesn't account for everything that I did do.
Yeah.
And so, because I can tell you that like I've made steps forward. Life looks a lot different today than it did 10 years ago.
I would set a goal to reevaluate your goals.
Yeah.
I would set a goal to reevaluate your goals. Listen, every year I don't meet my goals. Every year I don't meet my goals. But I always accomplish something awesome throughout the year. Fair point. It's hard to know what's reasonable. Can you actually achieve it by yourself? Can you achieve it by yourself? And are you giving yourself enough time? And if you're not sure, try it. If you don't get it accomplished, it means you need more time. Extend your goal.
Mm-hmm.
You know, extend your goal. Don't give yourself these rigid, non-flexible things to do, because you will fail every time. You will fail to achieve your goal every time. When you become rigid with your goals, you will fail. I have to be flexible with my goals because sometimes I think things are going to take longer and they don't take as long. And sometimes I think things are going to be like that and they take way longer. So
Star said sometimes some goals are just old, like from a past version of ourselves we've
cut
been
the
carrying
fluff.
around. Sometimes
Yeah.
we have to let go to pick up different ones. That's a really good thing to mention too. I have this collection that I've been trying to release for like 6 years, and I've never been able to get it from concept to reality. Like, and I would make pieces that belong to it and like take them to markets and sell them. But like I've never managed to turn it into a cohesive collection. And during one of my angry parts this year, I was like, I just want to get the damn collection released and on the website. And the fact of the matter is, I don't even know what it is. Like the reason it's never made it out of concept is because like I don't have a clear picture of what exactly I'm trying to do.
Yeah.
Because I've never given myself the time to sit down and figure that out because I'm overwhelmed every time I think about it. And so I can yell like, that's it. Everything else is backburnered until I get this thing done. But it's really like, it's not as overwhelming as it seems. Sometimes you just need to look at it and be like, do I even really want to do this anymore? Or was this a 6-year ago idea? Or I never want to meet angry Klee in the dark.
All right, we better sign off.
We
now.
could still talk for many more hours about this.
This was a great conversation. Like it was a lot.
Yeah.
But it was a good conversation.
One might even say it was productive.
Deb, this is one of those conversations that's not over. Like we'll bring it. We'll talk about this in different formats as well. Cause like, it's a lot. I know what you're feeling. And like, I can't say that I'm not feeling that sometimes still, but like, it's a work in progress. So thank you guys. To be continued, said Barbara. I think that's a good place to end. And thank you so much to the Rogues for being here. You guys are awesome. This was a great conversation. And for everybody at home listening to this, thank you guys so much for being here. And hey, if you like this and you want to watch more like this, you can click on whatever platform that you're on to subscribe or follow or whatever it is that you need to do. And yeah, other than that, you want to say goodbye, Klee?
Good day.
Adios.